Christian, how are you?
Well, I thought I'd follow Dr. Bill's example and take on a video. I hope that's
Awesome.
okay.
Great to see you. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Great to see you.
yeah.
As long as you don't mind the video, we don't mind.
No. Everything I do in the public eye. As I've said before, I'm one of the few Norwegians actually mentioned in the WikiLeaks. So publicity is my best defense because I'm being told. The last week I've been doing a lot. As you see, thank you, Alex, for making this user on the Duran.com author Christian, which is awesome. Thank you for this platform. And of course, I've published a lot about Russia, about the hypocrisy from so-called human rights organizations. Saying everything about Alexei Navalny and nothing about Julian Assange. Of course, free Julian Assange. And we need to lift up people like Colonel Douglas McGregor, who is voice of reason in the US. But the last week I haven't only been on the Duran. I've been working closely with Skolkovo, Moscow School of Management.
All right.
Yeah, I've been helping them organizing Norwegian journalists, developing relations. And today we had a conference about the Arctic and how to have more cooperation in the Arctic. I mean, maybe this is kind of a response to today's topic, the Cold War. Can we maybe have some countermeasures? I hope to get your input on that as well, because of course we need to criticize the Western hypocrisy and the warmongering and everything. But we should also appreciate that that Russia wants to have good relations with their neighbors. For instance, in 2007, I was the editor-in-chief of this magazine, Norway Exports. Normally, we had the forward from the respective ministries, and we had some problems when we were going to make the oil magazine, strategic partnerships in the Arctic, with Russia as a topic. The oil ministry refused to cooperate, but actually I called the office of the prime minister. So actually today's General Secretary of NATO, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, he gave us the forward for this magazine. So this was pretty awesome. But I mean, I have to play a careful game here because in Norway, I'm known as the crazy former NATO officer who's now speaking against NATO. But at the same time, I'd like to help sensible Russian voices like Skolkovo, and we had the Russian ambassador at large for the Arctic taking part in our roundtable. And we could get some perspectives on how to continue these fantastic partnerships we had in the Arctics. So my question to you guys is, to what extent is that possible? And how can we try to fight the effects of the Cold War by encouraging good and constructive partnerships with the Russians, especially in the Arctic?
I mean, it's going to be extremely difficult because, of course, all the headwinds are so strong in trying to prevent it happening. But if I may say, a country like Norway can play an absolutely critical role here, because Norway is part of the Arctic. It's very much part of the Arctic world. It's very close to all of these developments. It's historically, actually, and I'm perhaps not an expert on Norwegian history, but I've always got the impression that Norway and Russia have basically got on. I mean, I'm not saying there've never been tensions, but it's a country that has managed its relations with Russia well in general. And I think that Norway is in a pivotal position, if things are done well there, to actually make it possible to develop the Arctic peacefully because we are at a pivotal moment. I mean, either you develop it peacefully, either you develop northern sea routes, you can do all kinds of things, you can take care about the ecology there, you can work, everybody can work together to achieve these things. And I think, by the way, that is absolutely what the Russians would certainly prefer. Or you can militarize it. You could send in fleets. You can try and challenge the Russians on the Kola Peninsula. You can talk about sending troops to Norway, to the northern areas of Norway, insisting that Norway abide by its so-called NATO obligations to do all of these things. In which case, the Arctic, instead of becoming a zone of peace, becomes a zone of confrontation. And that would be a disaster. But Norway, as a country, has, I think, an absolutely pivotal role, because if it says no, if it says we want to continue to work in a peaceful way, we're obviously not going to agree to everything the Russians do. That's not what we're about. And we are obviously willing to call them out on things. So if they build up some great jamming station, as apparently they have, and that disrupts communications in Norway, well, we call them out on that. But Norway, which I think is a country which the Russians actually quite like, have historically had good relations with, if Norway can push for some sort of an easing of tensions in the Arctic, says to all the countries, well, this is not a place where we could have a sort of confrontation, then that might actually be extremely important, and it might have some effect. And given that Norway, rather the Arctic, looks like it's going to become much more important in the way the world economy works, not just because of its natural resources, but most probably because it's evolving into an important sea route, then I think it could even become a bridge for an improvement in relations if it becomes a peaceful place and is developed in a peaceful way. So I think Norway has a big role to play, actually. I don't know what the sentiments about this are there, but rarely does a country have as much importance and have as much potential influence as Norway does at the present time.
That's all correct what you're saying here, Alexander. But unfortunately, Norway's government is maybe the most loyal NATO government of all NATO countries.
Yeah.
We give our airplanes and our special forces and our soldiers willingly to United States wars.
Yeah.
So I'm actually asking you for a bit of guidance here.
Well, I think
I want to create a political window of opportunity for the Russians, maybe to translate their things and to get them more published in Norwegian media. I think there's a war of also public opinion, even if the government is very pro NATO. What is the best way to proceed?
No, I think the best way to proceed is to do exactly what you said, to actually translate Russian things, to facilitate contacts between Russians and Norwegians, to get scientists from the two countries talking to each other. Scientists can carry traction, to do many things of that kind, and also to remind Norwegians that their country used to have an important tradition before it became involved in NATO, before the Second World War, of being a neutral country, and that this was something that Norway, was at one point celebrated for. So I think reminding Norwegians of their own traditions, if you like, their own older traditions, but also doing precisely what you said, acting as a bridge. My impression, as I said, I've been to Russia. I was at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, and there were quite a lot of Norwegians there at the time, business people, and there was even an ex-Norwegian minister there. And the thing that struck me was that they were actually very well received by the Russians, and that the Russians seemed to be able to work and get on with Norwegians in a way that, to be entirely frank, they have difficulties with some of the other Scandinavian nations, the Swedes and the Danes, for example. So I think it might be possible. And I think if you work on this, I mean, again, I know this may surprise some people, but the Russians are very familiar with many elements of Norwegian culture. Ibsen, I know, is often performed in Russia. Peer Gynt is very popular. Grieg's music is very popular in Russia.
Grieg, it melts my heart. It melts my heart when you play Grieg. Then I feel very Norwegian.
Well, there you go. So and so, as I said, this is something that you can play with. You can do it both with the Russians. To the Russians, you could bring out all these things, and at the same time, you can also do the reverse. You can communicate to the Norwegians aspects of Russian culture, which, by the way, I think Norway is a country which sometimes it might be able to understand much of what goes on in Russian literature better than some countries in the West do. I think that the country that produced Ibsen, to be frank, is going to be better able to understand a Dostoevsky or a Chekhov than perhaps the English do, as a way of as an example.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
I'll see you soon in Belgrade.
Yeah, thank you. You certainly will.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care.
Take care.